Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Okay, whether you're a first-time founder stepping into the ring or a seasoned board member, understanding exactly how much oxygen your company has left in the tank is your absolutely most critical survival metric. So today, we're demystifying the cash runway formula. We're going to dissect exactly how you should be calculating it, and honestly, where so many incredibly smart people go completely wrong. 38%. According to CB Insights, 38% of startups fail simply from cash depletion. They just flat out run out of money. It's not because their product wasn't great or that their market didn't exist. It's simply because they miscalculated their survival timeline. That is a massive percentage. And it really tells us that mastering this topic is literally a matter of life and death for a company. All right, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The survival metric. 2. Gross versus net burn. 3. 5 steps to calculate. 4. The Lucid Motors lesson. 5. The Runway Triangle. And finally, 6. Benchmarks and blind spots. Okay, kicking things off with part 1, the survival metric. You can really think of Runway as the ultimate countdown clock for a company. It is the definitive measure of time you have to figure things out before, well, the lights go out. And look, the formula itself, it looks deceptively simple. Cash runway just equals cash on hand divided by net monthly burn. And honestly, the division is the easy part. A middle schooler can do the division. The incredibly hard part, and this is where so many executives stumble, is knowing exactly which cash to count, which burn to measure, and whether the final number actually reflects reality or just some static fantasy where nothing ever changes. Which brings us to part 2, gross versus net burn. Right? So this is where we tackle the absolute most common error founders make, and that is dividing their cash by the wrong type of burn. So on one side, we have gross burn. Now this is your total monthly cash outflow. We're talking payroll, cloud costs, marketing, rent, literally everything. Gross burn produces your gross runway. You need to think of this as your absolute worst case scenario. It assumes your revenue just drops to 0 tomorrow. But on the other side, we have net burn. This is your gross burn minus the actual cash revenue you collected that month, and this produces your net runway. Now the trick here, you need to report both. Gross runway is that terrifying number you stress test against, simply because revenue can vanish way faster than costs can be cut. But net runway, that's the realistic case. That is the number you actually plan around and put into your board decks. Moving right along to part 3, 5 steps to calculate. So the crucial point is, how do we actually find your true runway? Let's walk through the 5 methodical steps. Step 1, take your liquid cash on hand. And I mean liquid. Not total assets, just the cash and equivalents you can actually physically spend this quarter. So do not include restricted cash, uncollected receivables, or an undrawn credit line, well, unless that line is firmly committed and fully accessible right now. Step 2, sum up your gross monthly burn. Every single cash outflow. We're talking fully loaded payroll, infrastructure, taxes, and yeah, even those random one-time costs count toward depletion. Step 3, subtract collected cash revenue. And notice I said cash, not GAAP revenue, right? If a software company bills, say, $120,000 annually upfront, they collect all of it in month 1. For cash burn, you only count what physically landed in the bank account. Step 4, you just divide your cash by that net burn to get your net runway in months. And step 5, and this might be the most vital one, check the 3-month trend. Recompute this exact thing for the last 3 months. If your burn is rising, your true runway is actually a lot shorter than a single month snapshot implies. All right, let's look at part 4, the Lucid Motors lesson. Most tutorials give you a really tidy, hypothetical startup to look at, but a real-world, high-stakes case study proves exactly why snapshots are dangerous. Let's take the electric vehicle maker Lucid Group and look at their first quarter 2026 results. So Lucid reported roughly $3.2 billion of liquidity at quarter end, and they burned about $1.44 billion in cash during that same quarter. If we convert that quarterly burn to a monthly figure, so $1.44 billion divided by 3, we get roughly $480 million in net monthly burn. So let's run our formula. $3.2 billion divided by $480 million, that equals about 6.7 months of runway. That is roughly 2 quarters of cash left. This dangerously tight timeline actually forced Lucid to announce a massive $1 billion capital raise in April 2026 just to reset their runway to a slightly safer 9.8 months. But here is the plot twist, and this perfectly illustrates our point about checking the trend. In the exact same quarter a year earlier, Q1 2025, Lucid only burned $590 million.
By Q1 2026, it was 1.44 billion. Their burn more than doubled year over year. Think about that. If their leadership or investors had calculated Lucid's runway based on the previous year's burn rate, they would have estimated they had way more than twice the life they actually did. It's crazy. Runway computed on stale burn is absolutely the single most dangerous number on a founder's dashboard.
Okay, part 5, the runway triangle. So having a single number in months is necessary, right? But it is absolutely not sufficient for survival. I want you to ask yourself this: is a single runway number enough? The answer is a hard no. We really need to shift our mental model from a simple, one-dimensional countdown clock to a more sophisticated 3-part system. Because if you want to know if your runway is real, you've got to read it as a triangle. So the first vertex of this runway triangle is duration. This is just your net runway in months. It simply tells you how long the cash is going to last at your current burn rate. Right now, looking at the 2026 market, a healthy duration is 18 or more months, and ideally you want 24 to 30 months right after a fundraise. The second vertex is efficiency, which is often called the burn multiple. You find this by dividing your net burn by your net new annual recurring revenue. And what this tells you is if your burn is actually buying durable growth. A healthy multiple is below 1.5. I mean, think about it. If you have 24 months of runway, but your burn multiple is like a 4, you might have time, sure, but you are basically just efficiently setting piles of cash on fire. You're buying time, you're not buying durable growth. And the final vertex is timing. Simply put, does your runway clear the typical fundraise cycle? This vertex tells you whether you're going to be raising your next round from a position of strength or a position of sheer desperation. And here is the absolute critical takeaway for this whole concept. A company can pass any one vertex and still die. A phenomenal burn multiple means nothing if you only have 5 months of runway and run out of cash before the raise even closes, right? The triangle fails if any single vertex is red, even if the other two are perfectly green. Duration tells you if you survive, efficiency tells you if you deserve to, and timing tells you if the market will actually let you. All right, let's wrap things up with part 6, benchmarks and blind spots. So we really need to understand the current 2026 market standards. The old canonical target used to just be a flat 18 months, but the market has shifted. Investors now expect 24 to 30 months of post-raise runway. And why is that? Well, it's because the median fundraising cycle is now stretching out to about 23 months. In terms of actual cash outflow, seed software startups are currently burning a median of about $80,000 a month, while seed fintechs sit quite a bit higher at around $120,000 a month. Oh, and remember that survival odds stat from earlier? To put in perspective, companies operating with 12 or more months of runway have 3.5 times better survival odds than those with under 6 months. But listen, even with the best benchmarks in the world, the formula can totally mislead you if you aren't careful. So here are 3 common blind spots where you definitely shouldn't trust the basic formula blindly. First, when burn is accelerating, just like we saw with Lucid, right? Last period's burn severely understates next period's depletion. Second, if you have a strategic backer who can inject capital on demand, your real question isn't necessarily just burn, but how long until that next injection? And third, if your revenue is ramping up extremely fast, your current net runway might actually understate your life. Because think about it, you could actually turn cash flow positive before you ever hit 0. In all 3 of these specific scenarios, you absolutely must replace your trailing numbers with a forward-looking forecast and deeply, deeply analyze their unit economics. So to summarize the operational side of things, here are the deadly mistakes you absolutely have to avoid. 1. Do not divide by gross burn and call it net runway. 2. Do not count GAAP revenue, only count the actual cash in the bank. 3. Do not use a single month snapshot instead of a trailing 3-month trend. And 4. Absolutely do not report your survival as one lone number instead of presenting the full runway triangle of duration, efficiency, and timing. Look, I want to leave you with a somewhat provocative thought. The formula is a snapshot of a moving system. Runway is indeed the ultimate survival metric, for sure, but it is entirely downstream of your unit economics. True, durable runway comes from every new customer adding cash to your business, not subtracting it. So I ask you, take a hard look at your current dashboard today. Is it a true tool for strategic survival, or is it just a blind countdown to 0? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep those calculations honest, always read the trend, and I'll see you all next time.